I'm Travis Bullock.
And I'm Charlie Bullock.
And we're going to go over the gear list that we want you to show up with in a wilderness rifle elk hunt. So what Charlie's got packed right here are 4 main items. When you show up off the airplane, this is what we want you to show up with. You're going to have your rifle. It doesn't need to be in a hard case. And it's going to be empty, so there's no live cartridges in the magazine. This rifle here has a suppressor on it. You can show up with a suppressor with it, without, doesn't matter. Most hunters don't have a suppressor, but they are legal in Idaho, and they are, they're very nice to shoot. You're going to have a scope cover of some kind. Real key is you're going to have a bolt action rifle.
With the scope cover, you definitely do not want the end scope covers that sit there and flip up. Those get jerked off in the scabbards and get broke. You're going to want either a scope bikini or a neoprene scope cover.
So that's what your rifle wants to look like. We want it to keep it as simple as possible. Next thing you're going to have is a stuffable type sleeping bag. This is a fairly large sleeping bag, and if you come with a smaller one, we're sure not going to get upset with you, but you don't want to make it any larger than this.
Next, you should have your day pack. Your day pack doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to have a frame. This is my day pack. In my day pack, or on the outside, I have my extra jackets. I am wearing a Peloton QU t-shirt. My dad's wearing is a QU Merino t-shirt with a QU Merino long sleeve shirt on top of that.
So yeah, I've got 2 layers on right now. I've got the QU Merino wool t-shirt and the Merino wool long sleeve shirt.
I don't like to double up a t-shirt with a long sleeve shirt. I go to the next almost light jacket, which is the QU Merino 200 zip tee. This is what he has also. This is my second layer. This is his third layer.
So I actually have 3 layers on.
Next, I like to have a light jacket with a hood. This is the QU Peloton 240. Just any of those light jackets, the Strong Fleece or Peloton. Just I'd recommend getting a hood on them. Next, on top of that, I would wear the Kenai synthetic down jacket. This is, it's a synthetic down, so it's not filled with feathers. It holds up a little better. It's not quite as warm though. That's also what my dad's next layer is. So you can have one of the actual down jackets. They're definitely warmer, but this works plenty good.
So I have the same thing. I have the, what do you call this one?
The Strong Fleece 280.
So this would actually be my 4th layer. This puffy coat, which is called the
Kenai synthetic down.
That's my 5th layer. And then I think you're about to show the same thing here.
Yeah, both these are the QU guide jacket. These are our outer shell jackets, basically what we wear when it's not raining, and to cover up our down coats, that way you don't tear up your down coat.
And then the last layer you're going to have, we have 2 different types of rain gear. He likes the QU, it's a little lighter, but it's also more expensive. We have a lady here in town that makes rain gear, and if you want her number, we'll be glad to give it to you. But you have an outer layer, so this is actually my 7th layer when it's really cold. And then I also have the rain pant. Mine have been pretty beat up. I've made suspenders for myself. The biggest thing I want to see you show up with when you show up with rain pants is that you have a zipper. So there's zips up the leg right here. When you're out there on the mountain, there's nothing more frustrating than taking your boots off just to get your rain gear off and on.
And these ones zip all the way up to the hip. And the nice thing about the QU, this is the Yukon set, is you can actually zip down, so if you're hiking, your legs can still breathe.
So when you show up, all of this stuff is going to be on your day pack, or it's going to be on your body.
So that was all the stuff on the outside of my day pack. That doesn't need to go inside when I'm hunting. So my backpack only has 2 compartments. This is the top flap. In my top flap, I carry around an inReach. If you'd like to have an inReach, you can bring one. You don't have to have one. It's just so I can communicate with other camps. We wouldn't like you using our inReaches for everything personal. If you have an emergency, you can sure use them.
Yeah, but don't plan on showing up and borrowing the other guys' inReaches all day long to conduct business at home.
So next, I have some toilet paper. Just a little bit of toilet paper in my backpack. I have a spare headlamp. What I'm wearing right now is actually a headlamp around my neck. I always have one of these all season long, even when I'm sleeping. In my pocket, I have a cigarette lighter and a Gerber tool. These are just the basic essentials that I always have on me, just in case I get stranded somewhere without my backpack.
You'll want a basic kit. So I carry a Gerber tool on my side, or a Leatherman. I carry a headlamp around my neck, and I carry 2 cigarette lighters in my pocket. You'll want those 3 things on you all the time.
I also have my fire starter. We use pitchwood a lot, where there's a lot of artificial fire starters that work great. And then I have my skinning knife. This is a Havilon Piranha. It's got replaceable blades. This is what I use. I use it for skinning and cutting up the meat and everything. That way I only have to carry around 1 skinning knife.
I usually just use your skinning knife, that way I don't have to sharpen it.
So that's everything in my top flap of my backpack. Now I just got my main compartment. So I'm going to be carrying around a spotting scope. You do not need a spotting scope. If you really want one, you can bring one, but I do not recommend it. The only thing I use my spotting scope for is when we spot game and I need to tell whether it's a bull from a long ways away or to judge how big it is. That's about the only thing I use my spotting scope for. Other than that, I use my binoculars to find all the game, and basically if it's a long ways out there and I just got to judge what it is, that's what the spotting scope's for. So I do not recommend bringing one because they're big and heavy.
As a hunter, yeah, you don't need to bring a spotting scope. If you're one of those guys that's dyed in the wool and you have to have your own spotting scope, we're not going to tell you not to bring it, but we're just trying to save you weight. And the bottom line is we have some of the most steep, rugged country you're ever going to hunt, so my recommendation is just keep it as light and as simple as you possibly can.
Next thing I have is my water bottle. This is the water bottle I carry. It's just a quart Nalgene water bottle. I know a lot of people drink a lot more water than I do during the day. I just make sure to drink a whole bunch at night and in the morning while I'm in camp. But if you're one of those people that needs a lot of water throughout the day, I recommend bringing 2. You're also going to have a lunch in your day pack, but we're going to give that to you for every day, so you don't got to worry about that.
So Charlie brings up a good point about the water bottle. One of the biggest things you can do every morning before you leave camp is just drink a quart of water. You get out there and you don't realize how much water you're going to go through, but you can save yourself packing a lot of water in your back if you'll just drink a quart before you leave each morning.
Next thing that you're going to want to, well, that I have actually, is a beanie. So I have my sunglasses on top of my head here, my baseball cap. I always wear a baseball cap all season long. And then if it gets really cold, I can take this beanie and put it over my ears, keep my head warm. And then if it gets warmed up during the day, you just pull your beanie off, put it back in your backpack.
So along with the beanie and the baseball cap, you're going to have, I have 3 hooded jackets plus my hooded raincoat. So when you add those layers, you got 5 layers on top of your head, so that should keep your head plenty warm.
Next thing you're going to have in your backpack is your meat sacks. I recommend, well, if you're coming on a combination elk and deer hunt, you should have at least 6 meat sacks just for the quarters of your animals. You should have 4 for an elk and 2 for a deer. We'll end up doubling the quarters on a deer and fitting them in 2 quarters of a deer in 1 large QU quarter game bag. You're going to want to make sure it's a quarter game bag too, not the zippered, boned out game bag. What happens is they just won't fit in these.
So and Charlie's right, you want 6 bags for the meat itself, but then you also got to think about your capes. An elk cape will not fit in that small bag. A deer cape will, but a bear or an elk would have to have the larger bag. So my recommendation is that you bring 8 of these large QU game bags. And what's the size again?
This is large.
This is the large. The people a lot of times bring cheesecloth, the little light meat bags. If you come on an early season elk hunt, I guarantee you flies are going to blow that, and then we're going to be struggling trying to keep salvage your meat. And just so everybody knows, the Idaho Fish and Game rules require the hunter to take responsibility of their own meat. We'll do everything we can to help you, and I think, you know, we've very seldom ever lost any meat. Never if it was ever our choice. But bring good meat sacks, try to stay away from cheesecloth, and we'll take these with us every day, so you can either keep them in your day pack or hand them to us when we get out there, and we'll stick them in the set of panniers. So what's going to happen is you're going to go riding out on your horse every day. We're going to take your rifle scabbard and your day pack, and we're going to put it on a pack mule, and that pack mule is going to have a set of panniers on it. And in those panniers, we're going to have your day pack and your meat sacks. And your meat sacks can be separate if you need them to be, but it would be nice if they actually fit right in your day pack.
Another thing we don't recommend is the big heavy canvas meat sacks, just because they are so heavy that they will stay on the horse. It's nice to have them in, you know, like my dad said, it's nice to have your meat sacks in your backpack. Just just in case we kill something away from the horses.
If you do have the big heavy canvas meat sacks, Charlie's exactly right. That's what happens is you leave them on the horse because you don't want to pack them, and then when you stalk the elk, you're down at the bottom of a canyon, your meat sacks are at the top, and as a guide, we're going to do everything we can to keep your meat clean.
So next in my backpack, or what you would have in your backpack, is your box of bullets. I recommend carrying 1 box of bullets in your backpack with, you'll fly in, your gun will be empty, you get to the airstrip, and we'll put, bullets in your magazine. We'll keep bullets in your magazine all week long. We just don't want them in the chamber unless we're getting ready to go kill something.
Always remember, rifles are empty on the airplane, never any round in the chamber until it's time to actually shoot the animal.
So you got a box of bullets in your backpack. Next, I usually carry around a couple pair of lightweight gloves. These are the gloves I use in Alaska. These are QU. This set's like 40 bucks, this set's like 25 bucks.
These are $1. I wear these, and if it's cold, I wear 2 pair of these. As a guide, you got to be able to feel the ropes. These are still light enough, they can do that. And they're just so cheap, and I know I'm cheap, but I'm not going to spend $40 for a pair of gloves. I'll just wear 2 pair of these if I need to.
And then also, you should have a heavier pair of gloves. I actually have them in my camp bag. I usually don't use them, but if you're one of those people that hands get cold easily, I'd recommend bringing some heavier gloves to slip over your lighter gloves. The last thing I have in my backpack, I carry this around on me. It's my camera. It's for taking pictures. When we kill something, I take pictures, just a few on this camera, and then I take a whole bunch on my phone. It's a lot easier to take pictures on a phone. So it depends on what kind of person you are. If you like the old style of cameras, bring what you want to have pictures on.
So in my backpack, I've got a camera bag right here. Sits my camera in it. A water bottle. Sits right over here on the side. My lunch will go inside the bag along with my spotting scope and my first aid kit. As a hunter, you don't have to have a first aid kit. As a guide, we have to.
One thing with the meat sacks too, it'd be nice, if, most meat sacks are white. So what is handy is if you can write your name on the meat sack, that way we can distinguish whose meat sacks are who, especially when we're flying game out, because what'll happen is we'll get a couple elk and a couple deer on the same plane, and if everybody's got the same meat sacks, it gets kind of confusing. We put a proxy on each bag of meat, but on that proxy, sometimes the proxy will be stuck inside the meat sack, so you're opening up the meat sack to see whose name's on it or whatever. If you could just write your name in big bold letters on each one of your meat sacks before you show up, then it's really simple. The pilot or the guide or whoever's lifting the meat in and out, or my wife when she meets the airplane at the runway, she can just take a look at it and say, well, this one goes to the cooler, this one goes to the meat processor, this one's being picked up by the hunter that's flying out. You guys are going to make determinations based on how you get here, on what you're going to do with your meat. So it just helps us tremendously if you'll just take that 5 minutes, write your name, big bold letters in a black magic marker, and then we know exactly whose meat it is. So this is my binos. I like the Zeiss 10x42s with the rangefinder in them. I can range stuff out to, I've ranged things out to 3,000 yards with it on a nice day. It's just, I got a built-in rangefinder. This is what I use. They're super nice binoculars. My dad's got the same setup, but his are Leica. Leicas just haven't worked as well. The laser's terrible. I hate to say that. I'm not trying to advertise for anybody or be a bad advertisement, but if I had my choice, I'm probably going to wind up banning a pair of Zeiss. The glass in the Leica, the Zeiss, and the Swarovski are the best glass that you can get. And as professionals, that's what we like to use. I like the 10 power. If you get any higher than that, I shake too much. Most people do. Everybody does. You'll need a good tripod. Our hunting really is not set up for bringing the great big elaborate tripod that you set your binoculars on. Most everything we do is within a quarter mile or so. So you're constantly riding your horse. You get off, you glass for a little bit, you jump back on and go. The guys that think they're just going to sit there all day long and glass with a big tripod, that just doesn't work for our system. So our recommendation is get you a pair of binoculars. If you like using the Bino Buddy like that, that's great. I still prefer to just take my binoculars, tuck them inside. That way it keeps my body heat, keeps my binoculars at the same temperature. So if it's 5 below 0 outside, I pull my binoculars out and I put them up to my face. They're already at the same temperature and they won't fog up on me. I haven't really had a problem with it though. He's a young boy. You don't know any different. This is old school. This is the way I like it. So the next is my camp bag. This is what you would have in camp. This is the QU Taku 3000. So it's like a perfect size bag. And as you can see, it isn't full. It doesn't need to be full. Just because you have extra room doesn't mean you need to bring more stuff. So
that's one of the biggest problems we have with hunters is they're so excited to go on the hunt. They spend all winter going through the Cabela's magazine, figuring out things gadgets they can buy, and they show up with these great big duffel bags with all this stuff that they really don't need.
in the end, it just really slows down the hunt, actually. So this is my heavier set of gloves. I don't actually use these here, but if you're a person with colder hands, I'd recommend bringing some heavier gloves of some sort.
In the late season, I wouldn't worry about it in September.
So in your bag, you'll want a pair of camp shoes. I use Crocs basically for my camp shoes, even in December and January. They're light, they're small. They're just nice to have as a camp shoe.
You can bring anything you want, and if there's snow on the ground, you may not hurt to have something with a little better traction, even just a light tennis shoe. But you want to keep it simple, keep it light.
So I got extra meat sacks. You would want extra meat sacks. So like my dad said, you should probably end up with 8 large QU meat sacks in the end, and that's what you should bring. I would recommend keeping 4 or 5 in your backpack while you're hunting each time. That way you got enough to cover either killing an elk or a deer. Probably not both in the day, but you'd also have enough for the cape. So you want to carry your extra ones in your camp bag. You'll also want your extra socks.
And you want 1 pair of socks for each day. So you're going to show up on day 1 of the total of 8 days. You're wearing your first set. So then you want 7 more pairs of socks in your bag.
You're going to want wool socks too. Wool socks do the best. They keep your feet warm while they are wet, even if they are wet.
And you can make it a wool blend if you want, wool with polypropylene or something like that.
But you'll want 50-50 is usually about the best.
50-50 is a good blend. I love wool socks. In fact, I just remember cotton kills. So stay away from cotton socks if you can.
And Darn Tough is a good brand. They're a little more pricey, but you bring whatever you want. You should have a second box of bullets just to be on the safe side. Just in case your rifle gets bumped off and you need the target practice. Just keep an extra box of bullets in your camp bag.
We do that 2 or 3 times a year. If somebody's rifle's off, we have to go back to camp, sight it in. So bring that extra box, but keep it in your bag. You don't need to take it with you in your backpack every day.
I'd bring an extra 1 or 2 sets of underwear, just to be on the safe side. We don't change our underwear very often unless we have problems.
If you're like me and you're over 50, you might want to bring at least 2 sets.
So the next thing I got here is long john bottoms. If you're a person that gets cold with just regular pants, these are the long john bottoms I'd recommend. What happens is these zip all the way down the legs, so you can put them on or take them off without undoing your boots. All you gotta do is pull your pants down and you can put. So the next thing you should have in your camp bag is your second pair of pants. These are the QU guide pants. Right now I'm wearing the QU attack pants. They are meant for a little bit warmer weather. They are better for, say, August, September, maybe the first part of October. I wear these basically from October all the way through March. I wear them cat hunting, elk hunting. These are all of our guides' go-to pants for the most part.
So remember, if you're coming early in the season, wear the attack pant, and then your second pair of pants is going to be the guide pant. If you're coming, say, after the 1st of October or the middle of October, I would recommend you wear a pair of the guide pant, and then your second pair of pants is also the same type of pant. Yeah,
we recommend you bring 2 pair, the attack pant and the guide pant, but depending on the season, which one to wear.
So if you're early in the season, you bring an attack pant and a guide pant, and if you're coming later in the season, you bring 2 sets of guide pants.
So then you should also have some extra shirts. I trade my shirts about once a week. But I know a lot of people like to do it more often than that. So I have an extra long sleeve Peloton shirt here and an extra short sleeve Peloton shirt here. My dad likes the merino wool shirts made by QU. I prefer the Peloton. So I just bring a few extra shirts, but you don't need to go crazy.
When you think about this, you're sitting here saying, oh, these guys don't change their clothes every day. But the reality is, once you get out there, it's just easier to keep your same clothes on.
And the last 2 items I got in my camp bag are a package of baby wipes. I like to have these just to keep myself clean, and a toothbrush and some toothpaste. And that's it. It's empty.
So the only thing that we haven't gone over is if you come on a late season wintertime lion hunt, you're going to want a couple extra layers. You're going to want a heavy coat, and you're going to want to have extra set of bib overalls. Now these bib overalls, I wear these snowmobiling out here in the front range, and I also wear them on the horses in the backcountry. So if you take off in the morning and it's cold, you're going to have these on. But if it gets later, let's just say we turn loose on a cat and we have to walk up the mountain, these things are not going to go with you. You're going to pull these things off, and so your legs are free to move. But you're going to leave them in the panniers on the pack mule, and then when you get back down, of course, you're going to be sweaty, and you might have a 4-hour ride to get back to camp. You're going to put these on, and then you'll be comfortable all the way back to camp.
If you're coming hunting with us from October through basically March, you're probably going to want a set of gaiters. These are the QU Yukon gaiters. Their purpose is to keep snow from coming up your pant leg and getting packed in the top of your boot. And they also add a little bit extra insulation. But early on in the season, all they do is make your legs sweat.
Yeah, I don't recommend these early in the season. You want as much breathability as you can get early in the season, so I wouldn't worry about them in September.
When it comes to boots, I like a good hard-soled Vibram boot. This is the Crispies. They're 200 gram insulation. The only problem with the Crispy is their Vibram soles. The tread comes off quicker. They're more comfortable than the Kenetrax, I would say. But the Kenetrax, I like them more because they grip. They got really good traction. These are 400 gram insulation. A lot of times I wear non-insulated all the way, in the winter. So it depends. I'd recommend anywhere from non-insulated to 400 gram insulation, depending on your circulation and how you like your boots to feel.
I've never felt a more comfortable pair of boots than these Crispies. But like Charlie said, the traction sucks. So when Crispy figures out how to put traction on their boots, they're going to have, without a doubt, the best boot ever built. These are a pair of Irish setters. I wear these a lot in the wintertime. These are insulated. But I wanted to show you what the air bob traction looks like. If you're coming in the snow, say in November, or on a wintertime lion hunt, you want these little round circles. That's the best traction you can get. Because what happens is, you step down and it pushes down on the bob, and then as you step away, it expands and it pushes the snow out. So every time you take a step in the snow, it should clear the snow out. Now, it doesn't always, but that's the idea behind it. The problem with the air bob traction is they wear out pretty fast. Schnees makes a boot with air bob traction. It's a lace-up boot. I think they call it the guide boot. I used to wear those all the time. I haven't recently. But the main thing is you don't want something with a great big heavy liner on the inside. If you're going to get a boot with a liner later in the season, make sure it's a real thin liner so that you can still feel the rocks and stuff with your toes.
Next thing we want to talk about is probably archery.
So if you come archery hunting, there's one major rule. Keep it simple. The more that you have on your bow is the more there is to go wrong. So when we ride out in the morning, typically you can either keep your arrows in your quiver or you can put them in an arrow tube, and then we'll put this arrow tube on the pack mule. And then when we get out there to where we're going to hunt during the daylight, take it off, put it in your quiver, and carry it with you. You'll want a bow sling of some kind. This is a very popular bow sling. It's probably not my favorite. My favorite bow sling, and I can't remember the name of them, I think there's a couple brands that make them, but they actually attach to the bow and they don't come off. This one comes off, so it gets lost easy. The slings that I prefer the best actually attach to the bow, never come off, and then they have a magnet. And the magnet attaches right down here on the handle, and then it's out of your way. It never gets in your way when you go to shoot. Some of the things you want to look for when you look for a wilderness type archery bow is you take a look at this plane right here. You don't want anything sticking out past the plane of the ends of these of your bow here. Some bows you'll see, they'll have a front sight that sticks out here. That might help at target practice and might make you a better shot. But when you're wearing this with the sling on your horse, it's going to be sitting right here. And if that sight is sticking down, or if the stabilizer is sticking down, it's going to be bumping you in the hip. And stabilizers, as far as I'm concerned, if they could get rid of all stabilizers on a wilderness elk hunt, that would be the best thing they could do. Because stabilizers get in the way. And they might help your shooting ability, but you need to learn how to shoot without all of the extra gadgets. Get a good heavy-duty front sight. Idaho just changed its laws. You're now allowed to use expandable broadheads, and you're allowed to use lighted nocks. This is a whisker biscuit. This is still my favorite because there's really not much to go wrong. You can have a drop-away rest, and again, it might make you a little more accurate, but there's more moving parts on it to go wrong. So keep it simple, keep it clean. The less moving parts you can have on your bow, the less there is to go wrong, because it never ceases to amaze me how bows can just fall apart. As far as a rifle goes, you bring whatever you're comfortable with. Charlie's got a rifle. We love suppressors. It's a guide's best friend. you can screw this suppressor off, but we usually don't. The main thing that you want is you want a bolt action rifle. Don't show up with an automatic rifle. I've had more problems with automatics, and I've had guys tell me, oh, but my automatic's a good one. When you pull that action open, you can't, and you're sneaking up on an elk, you can't quietly shut an automatic. It's going to make a noise. You have to slam that thing shut in order to get to close. Because I've had several guys bring automatics, and they get up there and they're pulling the trigger, and it won't go off, and you bind up having to slam the slide shut. Bring a bolt action rifle. We prefer, this one's a 260. That works just fine. Charlie's killed lots of elk with that gun. 260 on up. Don't try to overcompensate with poor shooting ability by bringing a larger caliber. Bring whatever caliber and whatever rifle you're comfortable shooting. This scope, this is a long distance scope. It's a Husqvarna scope. Now it's got a turret on it that's specific for this rifle and the bullet drop. So you can start it off at 0, you can go to 100 yards, 200 yards, you can go out to 1,000 yards if you want.
I do not carry a cover on this part just because I adjust it so often when I go to shoot. If I shoot past 200 yards, I need to adjust this. I don't look at anything in the scope, I just hold the crosshair the same, and the scope does all the work for me. But what you don't want to show up with is adjustable windage turret. You need to have a cover for your windage turret. That is a huge problem.
If that side turret, if you show up with a rifle without a cover on that side turret, or at least a button to click to keep that thing from spinning, we're going to put you back on the plane and we're going to send you home.
Even the button, it spins in the scabbard and it gets thrown off.
You really need to have a cover.
I've seen some people, they just can't find covers for their scopes, but they almost use a whole roll of electrical tape making sure it's locked up tight, and that works too, but you want to make sure it's on before you do that.
And you already said it once, but we're going to say it again. What happens is you show up without this cover, you go out to the range and it doesn't spin. But when you put this thing in the scabbard on your horse, it's underneath your leg or it's underneath the pack on the pannier, and it sits there and rubs back and forth, and this thing spins around. And if it spins around 180 degrees and you get out there and you can tell it's off, but you don't know whether to come around this way or to go back this way, and you don't know if it spun around 2 or 3 times. I've had more problems with people trying to be long distance shooters and they screw up because of that. So make sure that windage turret has a cover on it. Now I prefer to have rifles that have the top cover. The good thing about this one is you can always bottom this one out and start over.
Mine, I start shooting at 2. If I'm shooting from 10 yards to 200 yards, I put my scope to 200. It shows 200. But the great thing is I can always turn my turret to the left and I can bottom it out, and it only goes around about a quarter of a way before I'm bottomed out, and then I know which 2 is the right one, which one is the very first.
But you can't do that with a windage turret because it'll sit there and spin and spin and spin, so there's no way to bottom it out and start over again. So yeah, we can't talk about that enough. The other thing we'll say is we don't care if you want to be a long range shooter or if you're not comfortable shooting long range, we don't care. It's your hunt, we want you to shoot however you want. But if you wound an animal, we're going to spend the rest of your hunt looking for it. So make sure before you pull that trigger that you're comfortable with what your shot is. You gut shoot an elk, we're spending the rest of your hunt looking for your gut shot elk. Make sure you're good with the shot before you pull the trigger, because we can't pull the trigger for you.
Next thing we have is shooting sticks. In my mind, they're kind of a pain in the butt. A lot of people bring bipods, shooting sticks, and these can be used as walking sticks. Often what we like to do is we'll just use branches. I mean, they're already out there, we don't got to pack them in there, and they're not in your way.
The great thing about these is if you want a set of them, just look along the trail, there's usually 2 or 3 sets with the people before you've lost them. So yeah, like Charlie said, I use walking sticks. I'll grab a couple branches off of a tree, I'll use them for a walking stick. It really does help you, especially in the snow during land season, because you can feel for things in a boulder field. But they really do take a lot of pressure off of your knees and off of your hips if you use walking sticks. And then if you're making the stalk on the elk, a lot of times I'll just pull my belt off, wrap it around the 2 walking sticks, and you can still make the same thing. And then when you're done, you just throw it down. It doesn't matter if you lose it. So we prefer not to use these kind of sticks, but if you're dead set on having to bring a set of walking stick, or bring a walking stick or a set of shooting sticks, it's your hunt. You bring what you want.
Next thing we want to go over is bipods. Our rifle scabbards compensate for the silencers. They will hold that. But what happens is you get this bipod right here, and it's not going to fit in that rifle scabbard. What's going to happen is we're going to have to take this off every time we go to put your rifle in the scabbard. And sometimes we'll pull that rifle out and put it back in the scabbard. I've done it over 20 times in one day before. It just depends on the day. November deer hunting, we just might It's just the way the hunt goes. We don't want to leave your rifle on that mule and just walk away while we're hunting or, you know, glassing. Otherwise they could bump your rifle. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're going to get a bipod, you're going to need a tall one. You know, this one's tall enough and it can adjust farther. But as you can see, this is kind of noisy and time consuming. You don't want to be screwing around, you know.
The reality is if you're going to use a bipod, it's because you're going to be in the prone position. If you're going to be in a prone position, it's probably because you're going to have a distance shot. So you really don't, bipods can come in handy once in a while, but more often than not, they're in the way. So we recommend is don't even bring a bipod. You're either going to shoot from a prone position off of your day pack, or you're going to shoot with a set of shooting sticks if you need that. Or you're going to get back to the kneeling position if you're within 100 yards, maybe 200 yards. Anytime you can find a tree, if you can grab a hold of that tree and pull your index finger out, and you can get a good rest like this, especially in the bugle hunt situation. On those early season hunts, if we're bugling bulls and they're coming in, I always recommend that people try to get some kind of a rest. Grab a hold of a tree, lay that rifle over your index finger, and then hold the rifle up. If that bull's coming in and he's coming in from over here, when you see his eyes coming over the hill, do not move until his vitals are in the open. Once his vitals are in the open, then you can spin around and you're ready, you can pull the trigger. When that bull comes in, he's going to be looking. He knows that there's something there. It's a cow call or a bull or something. And when he's coming over the hill, you're going to just slowly see more and more of him. So make sure you hold still, because they pick up motion better than anything else there is. Any other animal I've ever hunted, an elk will pick up the motion. What they don't pick up is color. So this camouflage that you're looking at here, in my mind, is kind of a joke. I don't care. You can wear bright orange if you want to. If you want to look like a pumpkin out on the mountain, it doesn't matter to me. What they pick up is movement. So do not move. Once you're in that position, do not move until that elk's vitals are in the open. Then once he's in the open, for some reason, elk always give you about a 3 to 5 second window, which doesn't sound like very much time, but if you're set up and in position and all you have to do is squeeze the trigger, it's lots of time. But again, don't move until the elk has his vitals in the open. And I tell that to people all the time, and it's amazing how many times buck fever takes over and people get to shaking and they see them and take off.
So this video has mostly been tailored to a wilderness type hunt. What we don't want to see bring to the wilderness is a bedroll type sleeping bag. This thing is very bulky, large, and it's going to be hard to pack around. If you're coming to the front range area, this will work just fine because we're using a four-wheeler to drive down to camp. You know, you can bring whatever you want.
Yeah, on the front range, you can bring the kitchen safe if you want to. We don't really care. We're not going to pack it all down to camp, but if you're driving your own vehicle out here, you can load up the back end with stuff. We don't care. You know, a lot of guys, as far as their meat goes, we have a meat processor here in town. Right now, as we're making this video, the guy's got his business for sale, so I don't know what's going to happen. Our recommendation is try to figure out a way to take care of your meat without having to use the processor here in Chalice. If you're driving your own vehicle out here, you can use coolers. Typically we'll have the meat cooled out, unless it's really early in the season and it's just really warm. Once that meat cools out, it'll usually last you until you get home. I've had guys bring freezers and things like that. If it were mine, I probably wouldn't worry about doing things like that. You can get some coolers with some dry ice if you want to do that.
We also have a walk-in cooler that we can put meat in if it's too warm up at camp.
Yeah, if it's too warm in camp, and that's in the front range. If we bring the elk down like on an archery hunt, we'll hang it in the walk-in cooler and it'll be ready for you to go home. And if you just wrap some blankets with it or whatever, even if you have to drive for a day, it'll be fine until you get home and get it to a processor or process it yourself. As far as a taxidermist goes, we've got a great taxidermist here in town. We don't process and ship capes ourselves. So you can, if you drive out here, again, that makes it simpler. If you have your own taxidermist back home that you want to use, you're welcome to use him. If you want us to get the capes and the antlers to the taxidermist, we'll be glad to do that. One thing you need to think about, just started this year in 2021, Idaho is no longer a CWD free state. So if you're going to take antlers, they have to be boiled out with no meat on the skull if you're going to do a European mount. Now you can still cut the skull cap off if you're going to just do a regular shoulder mount, or if you just want to take the antlers home. But it is your responsibility to take care of that. We can get your antlers to a taxidermist, but it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt, and there's really nothing that we can do about that. So if you're in the wilderness, we're going to have to fly your meat out. We charge you for flying the meat. We'll get it to the airport. Typically your meat's going to stay in camp with you until the end of your hunt. If it's a really, really warm day or something and that meat, and we're skeptical about that meat, we might fly it out early, but 99% of the time we don't worry about it.
September.
September, you can, yeah, in September sometimes we'll have to get it out early, but typically if it's getting cool at night, you've got it in good meat sacks so the flies can't blow it, and we can get it down next to the creek where it's cool at night, your meat's going to be fine. Once in a while we will have to fly it out early. And like I say, we do have a cooler out here, we can hang it in, or we can get it to hopefully to a meat processor if that's what you choose. Don't plan on coming on a hunt, having your meat processed while you're in camp and then you picking it up and taking it with you. That usually doesn't happen. Usually the meat processor is so swamped that he just doesn't have time to take care of your meat in that fast amount of time.
Another thing that we've had issues with is in the wilderness hunts, we have some farther camps. And what will often happen is you will lose a day of hunting going to that camp. You will be hunting the whole time there, but we have had clients be upset about losing a whole day of hunting for travel.
Remember, if you're going on a roving trip or going to a spy camp, you know, if you go out there, you still got to get back before the plane leaves. So just keep it in mind. The bottom line is 99% of our customers are overwhelmingly happy. But we always get 1%, and no matter what we do, they're going to get complaints. But we still strive to do the best job we possibly can. Okay. Thank you for watching Mile High Outfitters. If you have any questions, our phones are always open, but please take a look at our video, and it should answer the majority of your questions.